I'm so sorry.
Good morning, everyone. I'll call to order the January meeting of the State Board of Education. I appreciate everybody being here. Happy New Year to everyone. We are, of course, still a few months away from returning to our usual home at the ADE, and so we are very appreciative of ADEQ continuing to host us. And I know Robert Hunter needs to give us our monthly instructions, which we will listen to.
Thank you very much, Jay. To everyone, we welcome you again to ADEQ. We hope that our facilities are meeting all of your needs. Please let me know. I want to once again thank you for an incredible staff. Kimberly, Tiffany, all of you, Kalisha, everybody that comes in, they are so easy to work with. Our staff doesn't even know that they're here when they set up the day before. So your staff should be commended for all the work that they do in prepping for these meetings. It takes hours for it. I do want to tell everyone on the board, as well as all of our visitors, for safety's sake, if we have a fire alarm, which last Friday we did, we had a situation. It was nothing in the building major, but we did have a little situation, and we had to go outside, and it happened to be one of those 20-degree days. So if you do hear the alarm go off, the lights on the alarms will blink. Please exit again out this door to my left. I'm going to ask Dan at the back and Kimberly, if y'all will make sure that people keep moving, I will come down as soon as I can. Kimberly thought I should also mention that tomorrow you have another meeting, the second day of your meeting. It is forecast that we might have some inclement weather in the morning. It looks like, I looked this morning, it looks like it's further east of us than possibly, but our weathermen are not always exact on things. We will be here. You will be able to get in the building. I do want to tell you that our parking lots are hard to manage in the way of kind of keeping them clean, but we will ensure that all sidewalks, and if you're entering the building, just please come through the route of the sidewalks and stay off of coming around on the driveway. But we will have the building will be open, be comfortable, and if there are any needs. But Kimberly knows how to get hold of me, and we will stay in contact in the morning. So we hope you have a good day, and we look forward to again seeing you next month, and we will do what we need to make your stay with us as pleasant as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it. We start out today with a little bit of celebration, a recognition of John Collins as the Superintendent of the Year for 2017-18, and I will turn it over to Commissioner Key.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask Mr. Collins, would you come on up, please? And I see that my friend Senator Ingram has joined us as well, so I want to acknowledge Senator Keith Ingram from West Memphis, who is a strong supporter of the West Memphis schools and a good friend of Mr. Collins. Yesterday, at the Superintendent Symposium, Mr. Collins was recognized. I told him we didn't have a big check to present to him today, but a few months ago he was announced as the Superintendent of the Year, and very proud, and I think it's very well deserved. You all will remember, and I'll just say this, and then I'll turn it over to you, John, but you all will remember a couple of years ago when we had, as a board, as a department, had a very tough decision to make regarding the Hughes School District, and because Mr. Collins and his team are doing the right things for kids, that seemed to be the best option when we had to consolidate that. And if you remember, I made that recommendation. Mr. Collins has led his team to do a great job in bringing those students in, making them feel part of the family, part of the community, and I think in the long run, those kids are well served by what you are doing, John, and with your team at your schools. And that's just one example of many that I could point to where Mr. Collins is stepping up, providing great leadership. Again, it's a well-deserved honor, and we want to recognize you and congratulate you today on being named the Arkansas Superintendent of the Year.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your work. I really don't have any prepared remarks or anything. I didn't know I was going to be speaking, so I don't want to get long-winded and hold everybody else up that's on the agenda either, but it is a privilege. I'm very honored and humbled to be recognized as the Arkansas Superintendent of the Year for 17-18. It's been essentially my whole career in West Memphis, and worked 2 years as a middle school principal at Harrisburg, then moved back to West Memphis in '03 and have been there ever since. And you know, we're right in the heart of the Delta, as you know, and we face challenges just like everybody else. And our community and our board has hard work, grinding work, just like this board does for the entire state. And I appreciate your work so much for looking out for all kids in the state of Arkansas. And we'll continue to keep the light shining in the Delta. I do want to recognize and a sincere friend of mine, Senator Ingram, for taking time out of his schedule to be here today. A couple of years ago, we started the initiative of, you know, take your legislator to lunch. And I was high school principal, and just a quick story, a little bit about our friendship and how engaged he is in public school work and particularly our work at West Memphis and throughout his region. He was the first guy I called when I really wanted to pursue the superintendent's job, and I don't know how it's worked out this way. We really didn't sit down and plan this for communication, and we just heard from Shane Broadway and Bill Stovall over this morning to Doubletree at the Superintendent Symposium about stay in constant contact with your elected leaders and keep them engaged, and more importantly, communicate with them and keep them informed about everything that's going on, everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly in education. And he's had a busy schedule this week, and when he walked in a while ago, it was a little bit of a surprise. We have literally, for 5 years that I've been superintendent, have touched base every single Thursday for 5 years. And it's Thursday again today, so I don't know how it works out that way, but through text, email, phone call, office visit, face-to-face, he's been a great supporter, and I appreciate him. I appreciate you all. The work that you do it's grinding work. It's hard work, as Wheatley knows. But I know you've got a lot of educators in the state, and we heard from the State Teacher of the Year this morning, gave a great talk and testimony to all the superintendents. But it warms our heart to see such a dedicated group of people serving our state. So keep up the good work. It's an honor and a privilege to be before you today.
Y'all please join me in congratulating Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Thank you, Senator Ingram. I think we've said it again and again. I mean, high-quality public education takes a lot of actors. It takes a whole village, and y'all are two great examples of those key players in this. So thank you all very much, and congratulations. I know that Commissioner Key has a few comments to make before we move into our agenda about the where the state is with the Every Student Succeeds Act plan, and so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, you all know that earlier this week we submitted what's called our red line. We in December, right before the holidays, we got our initial feedback letter and a phone call with the Department of Education, and then we submitted our responses on Monday. And you all have received copies of those. I think we emailed all those to you. And
you also have them we have them at our.
And okay, good. And so yesterday at 4:50, we got an email from U.S. Department of Education saying, okay, we've reviewed it, and here are some other things that we have found based on your resubmission that we need further clarification. So if you notice, Dr. Pfeffer and Ms. Kaufman and several other members of our team who are not here today, they are back at the department and they're working. They also gave us a very generous deadline of today to submit our responses in order to stay within the window. They have a statutory window of 120 days in which to approve the plan, which I think we calculated would be Tuesday. It is in their response, it seems like they may be encouraging us a little bit to ask for extra time, which then kind of excuses that 120-day window. Well, we don't believe that, based on the feedback we received last night, that we are not asking for extra time. We are going to submit by close of business today response to those components. We also heard back this morning with respect to some of the McKinney-Vento response on homeless students. So that is something that our homeless and federal programs team are going to be working on through the course of the day too. So it may be a situation where I may have to ask the chair for some extra breaks if I get notification that we need some consultation. So please, up front, I'll ask forgiveness for that. But I think it's very important that we meet that deadline today. We think overall that what their feedback demonstrates is that we have a strong plan. There are some details that we just need to nail down. And so just wanted you to know up front. I was going to wait until tomorrow and present this in Commissioner's report, but due to the urgent nature of the feedback and the new deadline, I wanted y'all to know where we are. And of course, as we put these materials together, provide these responses, we'll make sure you're copied on those as well.
Any questions from anyone? Any copies? All right. Thank you, Commissioner. And
I'll make this comment.
Yeah, Ms.
Yesterday, Dr. Arola and Ms. Kaufman did a webinar, and it was terrific. It gave the schools a good first look at what will be expected of them and the whys. They went into great detail about, we did this because, and then emphasized the stakeholders. So I do want to express my appreciation, as well as I'm sure the rest of you, for Denise and Deborah and the webinar that they conducted. Those webinars are not easy things to do, but I know there's a big team behind them, but they were the upfront people yesterday, and we do appreciate them.
Great. All right. Thank you. All right, we now move to our consent agenda, and I do know that there are some comments on some consent items. I don't think there's anything to be pulled. I know Ms. Zook has comments on items 3 and 10, and then I know that several of us have comments on the collection of PLSB cases this month. So why don't I start with item 3, Ms. Zook?
I guess the concern that I had is, in addition to the 50-plus waivers of one kind or another that Little Rock School District had last month, they now have an additional 20. And, I'm not sure why they're having such a hard time staffing. There was a time when Central Arkansas districts were able to quickly staff, and then all the rest of the state sort of fell behind them unless they had people that lived in their communities. So I'm sure that Dr. Owa and his staff will ask all those questions, but it is concerning to me that many students are being taught by teachers who are not fully licensed or anyway, I'm not sure what all the reasons are, but I would appreciate if you'll check into that in particular.
Any comments now, Dr. Owa? Okay.
Good morning, Jeremy Owa, Educator Effectiveness. Mrs. Zook, we have been in communication with Little Rock School District. Just to note that most of the conversation has been centered around not waiting until December or November to submit their waiver requests, because they collect them over time and then submit them all at one time. And so Mrs. Renee Kovac from HR in Little Rock is going to work on that. So we're working with them on that process. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Zook, why don't we go down and grab number 10, and then we'll come back to the PLSB cases.
Okay, number 10 is about the student services report, particularly with regard to counselors in the schools. I know from experience, and also had a sister who is a guidance counselor, that there are many scholarships for students who want to go to college that are never tapped into. And with the expense of higher ed as it is now, I'm sure there's even more that are needing that. And it troubles me when the superintendents are not making more effort to have used the 75-25, 75% of the time with students and 25% of the time with doing administrative duties. And it particularly bothers me when the number really should be 1 to 250, and in Arkansas it's 1 to 450. And then when they edge up to 500 or more, so I want the superintendents and the school boards out in the state to understand. I understand all of the administrative paperwork that has to be done. I was in special ed in the beginning and the middle, and so I get paperwork. But I also understand that of the students, of which I'm personally familiar, grandchildren and nieces and nephews, that they were not given the guidance and helped with the scholarships to the degree that they should have been. One parent has even hired someone on the outside to help with this. And now that we are looking more and more at careers to maybe help pay for college and all the opportunities that exist in addition to college, I don't know what we can do about it, but I do know that it is an issue in some districts more than others. But I do know that this is of great concern because many of these people that are graduating don't have parents who ever went to college. They don't have parents who ever went into a apprentice-type occupation, and they need help from the school to work with that. So. Just since it was on the consent agenda as opposed to the action agenda, I just felt we need to look at that seriously.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on 10? Yes, great.
Yeah, Ms. Knowles is here
Thank you.
that can speak to any of the questions that y'all may have.
I'm Suzanne Knowles in Guidance and School Counseling at the Department of Ed, and I do really appreciate your concerns because those are concerns I live with every day. And I do appreciate your comments because last year when you made comments, I went back and reflected on those all year and how could we change our report to give us better information, that we could be more supportive, that we could be more aligned to ESSA or even TESS. And so we've done a lot of changing, some last year, kind of building up to some changes this year and asking more open-ended questions, which really is more work for me, but well worth it, to be able to provide more guidance to districts who need more support than others, because it's difficult to tell in the data that we currently have that that's the case. And I did want to comment on the 450 to 1. It's not by counselor, it's by district. So you could have a counselor with 250, and you could have a counselor with 500 or 550 and still be within the requirements of the law. So I'm always happy if there's anything that anybody would like us to do. We are constantly working on helping counselors and at every opportunity administrators understand comprehensive school counseling and what it really entails and how the impact that a counselor can make on there's a lot of research out there actually on the impact that counselors can make in the post-secondary aspirations and success of students if they have the time to do those things. So I really appreciate your comments. Thank you. Anything else I can respond to?
Ms. Knowles, obviously, I think even 250 is a high number, but we know that's the kind of the national number. Is there, from your experience and your research, I mean, is there a state out there or states out there that have really, figured out the puzzle of getting school counseling right? Because I know it's a national crisis in terms of counselors, but are there models out there that really do seem to be particularly promising in this regard?
There are, I would say, we are one of 3 states in the nation that don't have a nationally recognized school because we don't have, and we're working hard at it. I mean, we've had national presenters come in, we have done monthly webinars on like a now and later, this is what you can do now, this is what you do if you want to apply to be recognized, but here's good foundational fundamental counseling from the very basic beginning all the way through, career planning, lesson planning, thinking about it comprehensively. North Carolina and Tennessee, I think, are really moving in a really great direction, and Indiana, because they have a state-recognized program, which is something we'd really like to make happen. We just haven't figured out how to do it yet. A state recognition aligned with the national model, so that our counselors could be state-recognized even if they're not nationally recognized, and they don't do that. Or how could we help them apply? It's about a $400 application fee. How can we do that? We've been working on that in our office. But Tennessee and North Carolina have removed all testing from counselors. So what happens is now they have a lot more time. The expectations are higher, but the expectations should be higher. I mean, that's one of the things we share with counselors is if you want people to remove this off your back, what are you going to them and saying you can provide? Or I can't do this if I'm doing this. And this really is more meaningful to the success of our kids. So.
Well, I do think that, before I was on the board, but every year we get a report, some report similar to this, and it just highlights this crisis, and we know that there's some real disparities around the state as well in terms of what kind of counseling students are getting, and I think unsurprisingly, we know where the most challenged situations are exactly those districts with students who don't have opportunities in other regards as well.
And one of the pieces of feedback that I get every year from counselors is a kind of a fear that there be something punitive that happens, so they're nervous about the report. So a lot of the counselor-oriented questions this year will say, is this an area of strength, a developing area, or an area for growth? So just the terminology has changed, and I've talked a lot to them, and we always do a webinar and Q&A and PowerPoints until you just be ready to throw up about it. But we'll provide those supports as well so that we can go back and say, even if your superintendent got a letter, just saying this is an area that you'd like to grow in is not the same as you're non-compliant. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So really trying to think of it as more of a growth tool, and we've really been working in our office to promote that idea, saying we want you to be really more forthcoming. I don't have any evidence that people aren't forthcoming. I just sometimes feel like they might not be forthcoming. And to really support them, and that way I can then say, we can provide this opportunity for you all at the local level, because we can't really manage 2 people in our office to go to every district in the state and work with each people. I mean, we don't have the manpower to do that. But we can say, we've identified from your report some areas that you'd like to grow in, and we can provide support that way and really be more targeted in our work. So.
Great. Ms. Hook?
I wonder, superintendents have lots of things to think about besides a person or 2 of the counselors. I wonder if maybe it's inadvertent. They're not even aware of how much of the counselor's time they're asking them to be involved with administration. So if the counselor could maybe have a weekly meeting with and say, okay, because everybody can remember for a week, these are the things that I did that are labeled administrative, and maybe it's just a communication within, because if you have a very capable person, regardless of their position, then the superintendent, if he wants something done right, he's going to turn to that very capable person. So it could be that there is just a lack of awareness of how much of their time they're taking away from students.
And I do think there's some truth in that, and that's one of the things we've really promoted too, is having conversations with your administrators, because that doesn't happen everywhere. Some places it happens really well, other places there's some resistance to that, just having a conversation. I'm not really sure why. I mean, I could speculate, but I'm not going to. But we do ask counselors also, when you're not meeting that time, do you have any kind of use of time document that you can share with your leadership to say, here's where I'm spending all my time, And if we want to do these things, how do we want to make that happen? I mean, I think there's some things like career planning that need to be broader than a counselor, particularly with our numbers. But I do tell counselors, if you've got a career coach or you've got a career facilitator, you better be aware of what they're doing and be working with them. So it's not a buy to say, I don't know what they're doing and they're doing it. That's not a buy. We're all engaged in the success of our students, or, should be.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Ms. Knowles. We appreciate it very much. And then I think there were several comments on the collection of PLSB cases. So I'll kick it off with Ms. Newton, who I know had some comments.
I have some real concerns about, I think items 4, 7, and 8 especially. It just seems to me for the levels of the offenses, we're not being consistent with the actions that we're taking. And one of the things over the years that I've always tried to do is be consistent, and based on the circumstances that I read in these different cases, I don't think we're doing that. And so I have some real concerns, and I know we don't get all the details. I realize that. And so I don't know if we need more details or if we need to try to look at what we're doing and see what we can do to be more consistent, or maybe I'm just reading it totally wrong and we are being consistent. But I have some very real concerns with that, because, these are not just cases. These are people's lives. Going further than that, not only are these the adults' lives, we're talking about students. We're talking about whether we are choosing to put students in danger or not to put them in danger, and so we've got to get this right. That, of the things that we do, this has a direct impact on students. So we've got to get this right.
Great. All right. Do you want to hear additional comments before you? Sure. Thoughts? Okay. Any?
I had the same issue with number 4. I think that's the same one that I pulled 2 months ago, and I did read where it said that probation was, I guess, the highest that they could go with that because of I can't remember the term that was used exactly, but because of the evidence or lack of evidence, I guess.
Contradictory. There were some contradictions in the testimony, I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I just have the same concern. To me, those two cases are extremely similar, and I would have liked to have seen a similar disciplinary action myself. Not to question the PLSB, but it just seemed like those two situations were very similar. And when we're dealing with students who's, they're at a very fragile time in their life, and it really concerns me that someone that may possibly be a danger to so many students is only on probation. So it just really concerns me.
Ms. Hook, anything?
No, and I think when we are saying danger, we want to be sure people understand it's psychological danger, not physical danger. But yes, I guess at the very most or least that we could ask is that when you all get the reports from PLSB and you see that there are similarities in the information we're getting, is if you could go back to them and say, you're going to need to give me why this was one way and why this was another, because I'm going to be the one that has to stand up in front of the board and answer these questions. That would be helpful to me, because, quite frankly, 4, 7, and 8 don't appear to me to be significantly different, but the discipline is considerably different.
And I just want to make a special comment on 4. I do think that we all know the power of coaches in students' lives, and the fact that so much of the interaction between students and coaches happens away from schools. And over my time on the board, what I've felt is some indication of coaches not always being sanctioned at the same level. And it's anecdotal, but I've been on the board long enough that those anecdotes are starting to become data. And so I would just highlight that. Again, I think voice what I'm hearing from my colleagues, and I think we're really hesitant to question the PLSB, and we respect their work and their time and their dedication so much, but I think we do. Ultimately, the buck does stop with us on these issues, and I think things have gotten a lot better in terms of the information we're getting, but I think that there needs to be maybe a little more clarification for why some disparities from time to time. So I'll let you. I know we're constrained by the specific, not talking about the specifics in these cases, but I'll let you respond, Mr. James.
Eric James, Chief Investigator with PLSB. I share your concern that what we do is very important, and so does the Ethics Subcommittee. I do not speak for the Ethics Subcommittee by no means, but I can definitely share with you that the amount of deliberation taken on each and every case is substantial. And it's based on precedent cases and similar cases. The cases you guys did pull out, it was some clarifying language added to item number 4. Again, I cannot get into the specifics and the variables in every case, but the concern is definitely shared, and that message will be relayed to them. But at the same time, I'm an advocate for the subcommittee, and at the amount of deliberation, I wish you guys could see that, and the painstaking back and forth. Does this rise to this level? Does this concern this particular, or is this similar to the past incident that they've made a recommendation on? So please know that the student is our #1 concern in protecting students. To address the coaching situation, we are tracking specifically data on that, and I can attest and confirm that coaches are being held accountable and specifically addressed in specific training, and also even at coaching clinics, and we reach out to specific people in the AAA to also convey and relate and facilitate that message, in addition to our ethical training message that we do in our videos and as we go out to districts. As far as the consistency in the language, we are in line with what we've done in the past, but there are certain things that you guys don't get to see. I'm not sure. But I think our attorney might have some other clarifying information that might be helpful to you as well.
Right. Thank you, Mr. James. We do appreciate the hard work and your being a good advocate. Yes.
Good morning, members. Daryl Taylor, attorney for PLSB. And I think that Mr. James will essentially address the salient issues. The thing that is difficult to communicate when we do provide the orders that we provide are the differences, because these cases, although they may appear on paper to be similar, they are not. And so one of the things that I will start to add to your package is it's a sort of sanctions guidelines that is utilized by the members, and it outlines things like, this is the first offense? Are there prior disciplinary issues? What is the impact? How many students were impacted? So those types of things go into the discussion. And so perhaps if you were able to see that matrix, you'll see that there are very specific distinguishing characteristics. And so perhaps that will help. As I draft them, I'll also try to keep that in mind to perhaps add some additional language to help distinguish. But just sort of on the face, I will tell you there are some distinguishing characteristics. And we have worked hard on that rationale to try to not only give you aggregating factors, but also mitigating factors, which you will see in that language, specifically with number 4. Because ultimately there is a standard that must be met. We take very seriously, as you've stated, that this is the livelihood that is being impacted, so that we have a evidentiary standard that must be met. If the evidence does not meet that standard, we cannot take action against that member, plain and simple. If the witnesses that testify do not appear to be credible, then we have to weigh that. And it is unfortunate in some circumstances. It may seem unfortunate. However, we have to realize that we do have a very specific burden that has to be met. So keep that in mind also as you review, that is one of the things that we work very hard to do. Sometimes it may seem as if you have a feeling that something occurred, but if there is not evidence in testimony or documented in a document, we cannot move forward on it. And so I understand that may create a conflict in some points, but also understand, once again, as he says, there is oftentimes an hour or more spent in that deliberation looking for that evidence in order to ensure that we are meeting the standard. Is that responsive?
Yes. Very much so.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all both very much. Ms. Newton?
One quick question. You mentioned that you were tracking data on coaches. Are you tracking data on male versus female to make sure that also is equitable?
Oh, yes, we are. We're
Okay.
tracking, we break down all, like media specialists, classroom teachers, despite, coaches are teachers as well. But if the allegation occurred outside the classroom, they get put in a different criteria.
Okay.
So we do track a number of individuals outside of school, and hopefully towards the end of our school year, I can provide a report for you with that ethical statistical data. The Professional Licensure Standard Board continually gets updated on that information, but we want to be able to provide that information because despite a lot of the negative news articles that report on teacher-student inappropriate interaction, it's less than 1% of our total teachers in this state. It is actually, I have this statistic, but it's definitely less than 0.008% specifically. So I want to share that message. That message needs to be conveyed to the public and our constituents as we progress because, of course, this is a live stream. They see the names and they say, oh my gosh, but it's actually relatively a small scope of teachers in our state.
I guess maybe you didn't understand. I was wanting to make sure that the level of punishments for males and the level of punishments for females, or discipline, I guess, would be
Consistent.
Equitable.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I mean, and we break down the male-female aspects of every one of our data and analysis.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But both on the person against whom the allegation is made, but also on the student who would be the victim. Is that tracked as well on both ends?
The gender of the student?
Yeah. I know sometimes it's multiple students.
We have that information. We're not keeping that part of the important data that we share with districts and trainings and so on and so forth. We don't track the student. We don't track it, but we have it.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Any other comments on the consent agenda? Thank you, Mr. James, for your hard work. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
All right. All right. Motion by Ms. Dean, second by Ms. Wright. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you. Okay, we now move into our action agenda. And our first item up is an Arkansas Better Chance reallocation grant award, and I'll turn it over to Ms. McKinney.
Thank you. The last time I brought to you the request about the Melbourne School District, and I had intended for a chart to be included within where it indicates that we also try, anytime a program's setting up a new classroom, we always try to give them startup funding. And this is a one-time cost provided to them at about $250 per child. So I'm requesting you to consider approving an additional $5,000 to the Melbourne School District to help support the materials and supplies for the district.
Great.
So moved.
All right. All right. Motion by Ms. Zook, second by Mr. Black. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, Dr. Owa for the consideration of comprehensive 2017-18 semester report on waivers.
Good morning again. Jeremy Owa, Educator Effectiveness. Today, I would like to offer for your consideration a summary of waiver requests for up until this point for 2017-18 school year. I will highlight 2015-16, 16-17, and of course the fall semester 17-18 for the ALPs, long-term subs, and Act 1240 licensure waivers. 2015-16, we had 15 and 11 ALPs, 16-17, 14-30. Currently, up until January 1st, we're at 1294. That may seem like a large number, but would like for you to consider the fact that most of the ALPs are filed in the fall. And so we felt like that this is right on target and not anything of concern because of the number that's usually filed in the fall semester instead of the spring semester of the school year. Also note that there have been 442 special education ALPs approved of the 1294 ALPs that were issued. In reference to the long-term substitute waiver requests, currently for the fall semester we have 440 unique positions, unique meaning the actual position that the long-term sub is filling, and then 181 of those long-term subs began the school year statewide as the teacher of record, or not as the teacher of record because we didn't have a teacher of record. Act 1240 waiver requests as of December 31st, 2017, 52 districts in the state have been granted a waiver of licensure, and of those districts, the districts report 402 licensure waivers, individual license waivers. Wanted to show you this map that anyone can access through our My School Info, just to show you where the larger number of requests have been made or granted. As you noticed in reference to ALPs in central Arkansas, that area, and then of course northwest Arkansas in the green, and then the yellow is mid-range, and then the red are the lower numbers of waivers requested and granted. Same with long-term sub. As you will notice that in the Pine Bluff area, that's where the larger number of waiver applications have been granted, with the central Arkansas and the Delta area being mid-level requests. With Act 1240, Forest City area, Helena, West Helena area that area has the largest number of Act 1240 licensure waiver requests and granted applications. In response to Mrs. Newton's request last month, I also wanted to share with you, as it pertains to ALPs, in order to track, I think Mrs. Newton's question was, do we track or note the completed ALPs of applicants or teachers who actually complete the ALP plans? So just some context with that, teachers they have 3 years to complete, and under the new licensure rules, that of course that was changed to 6 semesters, but they have 3 years to complete their additional licensure plan. So in order for us to give you an accurate number, we looked at the cohort for 2014-2015 school year, and of the total additional licensure plans that were granted, 1,539, 1,539, 1,006 of those teachers actually completed the licensure plan and added that area to their license. So roughly about 65, almost to 66% rate for that. Mrs. Zook, I would add to you that out of that cohort, there were about 249 special ed instructional specialists granted. Out of that number, 169 were granted or added that area, and then in the special ed instructional specialists. For elementary, 155 were granted and 111 actually added that area.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'll entertain any questions if you have.
I have a couple, but I'll start over here. Ms. Cochran, did you have anything? Okay. Ms. Newton?
Thank you very much for doing that. This was great, a great help. Is there any way we can get a copy of this PowerPoint?
Yes, ma'am. I'll send it to Kalisha and ask her to send it out to you all.
Okay, because that was very, very helpful information. And I appreciate your diligence and your hard work on this, and I don't want to make more work on you, but here's a question that I have. Every month we get these list of schools that are having ALPs or long-term subs, and you're pulling together data for us on different subject areas. But you heard what Ms. Zook had done. She'd gone back last month in County Little Rocks, and then come back this month in County Little Rocks and try to put things together. Instead of just getting us a list of all that, is there any way that we can maybe get it organized and maybe get some counts on, the list is great, but then also maybe take it a step further and maybe get us a count of districts, how many ALPs, how many long-term subs that they have to date. And that would be helpful. And the one thing I also want to point out that was helpful, on your long-term subs, you had started putting whether it was a teacher or record missing, or whether it was just somebody going on leave, and so that was helpful also. So I appreciated you doing that, because I think the reports are getting better, they're getting more informative. But I think because it takes time for us to go back and 1, 2, we're doing all this counting. I'm sure yours is on an Excel spreadsheet or some sort that you could maybe pull that together quickly, maybe?
I have it right in front of me, so I'll send that to Kalisha as well.
Okay.
And so that you'll have that information by districts.
Yes, if we could get that by districts also.
I also have it by subject area,
that would
too.
be
Okay.
perfect.
Okay.
Wonderful.
We'll
Thank you. You read my mind.
Good deal.
Any questions? Dr. Hill? Mr. Williamson? Mr. Chambers? Okay. Anyway, over there. I have one. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Rice.
No worries, no worries.
Well, if you had a question.
No,
Now you may ask your
knowing
question.
Dr. Barth, he's probably reading my mind and would ask my question more eloquently than I could anyways. But no, thank you so much, Dr. Owa, for that. I apologize, the camera's kind of positioned where I know sometimes I have a little hard time seeing speakers. But no, thank you. I want to reiterate with everyone, we appreciate you pulling that together. I think the questions that emerged for me looking at this is, are we going in the right direction, right, with these numbers? And so I don't know if we have this data over a course of time, right, just as this last data point that you're offering, right, that we're looking at a 3-year time period. Are we doing that with all of the different categories? And then I know with the changes that we're expecting, putting into place right now, do we feel that we're going in the right direction with these numbers?
We feel so, that we are headed in the right direction. One case in point, with the additional licensure areas in special ed for resource for content areas such as math, language arts, we've seen an increase of students enrolling in those programs. And so we feel that as those numbers increase in the educational preparation programs, the requests for ALPs or long-term subs will decrease. We also hope that once the new licensure rules are approved, with those new licensure exceptions, we'll also see a decrease in the ALP and long-term sub requests as well, and maybe even the Act 1240 requests.
And if in that spreadsheet there, if you do happen to have information from alternative years, previous years, just that would be helpful as well. Thank you.
I'll make a note. Thank you.
So I have a very picky question, and then I have actually a bigger question for Ms. Freno, and I apologize for not giving you a heads up, but I just thought of it. So on the hyper-technical question, so with the new, and this I think maybe touches on the question Ms. Reither just asked, as the new law changes, which we're obviously working through the rulemaking process now, there are going to be some waivers that were, 1240 waivers that were requested that will no longer be needed, right?
That's correct, yes.
And so what are you anticipating doing with the data across time as those waivers, in essence, become moot?
Well, what we have done is when we have started to see, or when we notice that a district has requested Act 1240 waivers, we, and for a number of years, for instance, 3 or 5 years with the pending licensure rules, we've notified them of those licensure exceptions that are in the new or the pending licensure rules, and so that they may decide to lower the number of years requested in their Act 1240 waiver application, anticipating that the new licensure rules will be approved and in place so that they could take advantage of those licensure exceptions. So,
thank you.
Yes, sir.
And for Ms. Freno, a couple of big question here. As I look at some of these maps, you know, I think back to the Lakeview decision and the importance of high-quality teachers being available to students as kind of the heart and soul of high-quality education in that ruling. And when I look at some of these maps and I start to see some of these patterns develop across the state, it raises for me the question of, are we moving to a point where there are some equity issues emerging around the quality of the teaching that is available to students in certain parts of the state, and whether our waivers are perpetuating inequities? And I guess my question is, would there be a point where we would get some warning that we are getting into dangerous turf with some of the patterns that are emerging? It's not individual cases that may make lots of sense for a given case, but when we start to see some patterns, we start to see some inequities emerging in terms of the quality of the teaching that students in certain parts of the state are getting. Does that make sense?
I understand. Commissioner, did you want to make a
Well, I was just going to say, I think, you know, Lori's certainly welcome to answer from a legal standpoint, but back to the ESSA conversation, that's one of the areas of clarification that they had asked for, that Dr. Owa spent a lot of time last night putting together some data as far as how the state will, it really extends back to our equitable access plan that we had submitted previously. So he may want to expound on some of what we are going to be looking at to make sure that we do see patterns and work with districts to make sure that they are that they have plans in place or developing plans to address those inequities.
And Dr. Barth, that's exactly what I was going to say, that probably Dr. Owa would be best suited to talk about the equity labs that are going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, as mentioned, in order to address the equity gaps or the inequities, we are providing that support to all of our districts throughout the state, and examining, having the opportunity to sit down with the Equity Network, Equity Lab, to examine those inequities. So inequities in ineffective teachers, inequities maybe in inexperienced teachers out of field. And so we're going to actually start the equity labs late spring, and then continue providing that support throughout the state. Currently, well, as of this morning, we've added the High Poverty, High Minority report to our webpage under workforce data, under the Educator Effectiveness webpage, on the Arkansas Department of Ed website, for people, for anyone in the community to be able to see the school district, their percentage of inexperience, out of field, the third, ineffective, and then the teacher attrition percentage, and as those four components relate to their workforce stability index. So you can currently pull that report. In fact, I can add that to the list of reports to send to Kalisha so that you will have that. But that's part of the report that we submitted with our ESSA, and we'll continue providing support to the districts by providing that report as well as the Workforce Stability Index information and other meaningful data as it pertains to those particular schools or districts through My School Info, so that district level administrators and officials as well as school educators are able to sit down with community members, partners, and actually look at their data as it pertains to their setting and make effective decisions. One of the requirements for any school or district that shows the inequities, they would be required to develop a local equitable access plan, and so those will be their next steps on how they're going to address those inequities within their setting.
And that all sounds great, and I appreciate the data and the consciousness towards this issue. I just do think we have to recognize we need to be careful by pushing things too much back to the district level, the local level, that we're not giving up our state responsibility to be sure that equitable patterns exist across the state, and that's just, I think, something we have a responsibility, constitutional responsibility, to be conscious of as we engage in waiver work.
Yes, so. And we'll continue to monitor and on our end from the state level, and then provide that support for the districts to make sure that those inequities are addressed.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Ms. Reith, I'm seeing. No. Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion to approve this report or accept this report.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. Neen, second by Ms. Zook. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. Now we have a big chunk of charter authorizing panel decisions that we need to decide whether to review or not to review. And so I will turn it over to Ms. Boyd to talk us through our procedure and in these individual cases.
Thank you, Dr. Barth. Alexandra Boyd, Director of the Charter Unit. So for the next, I believe it's 8 decisions. These were decisions that were made by the Charter Authorizing Panel last month on renewal applications. Your discussions and votes today should lead you to review or not review the decisions that were made by the panel. Representatives from each of the charters are either here in person or on the phone should you have questions. Do you have any questions before we get started?
I don't have a question, but I will make a comment. I live streamed the meeting that they had, and every school that was being considered had been visited by one or more of the charter panel members. So I was pleased for them to see that, and pleased for the others so they could speak specifically and directly based on their experience.
Thank you, Ms. Zook. We definitely appreciate the panel members taking the time out to get that done. I think it did make the proceedings go smooth.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on procedure? Okay, then we will turn to the first case, which is the Blytheville New Tech School. I think Robin Sneed is here. Okay. Is it?
The representatives from Blytheville should be on the phone.
Okay, they're all on the phone. Okay, I had that one was here. Anybody from Blytheville on the phone?
Yes.
All right, if you could just identify yourself. All right, Mr. Ashley, Bobby Ashley, anybody else there, just for the record? All right, thank you. Thanks for the three of y'all. Okay, you got the materials. I'll just start with Ms. Reith. Any questions on this case? Okay. Ms. Zook? Okay. Mr. Black? Any questions on the Blytheville case? I do have a general question. It actually applies to several of these. I know in the ESSA plan, we obviously have new targets. We have new targets now for achievement across time, and there was reference in some of the the votes by charter authorizing panels, that the targets in some of these proposals might need to be changed if the ESSA plan was approved. And my question is, how will that happen? Will they have to come back for a waiver, or
Right.
how will that play out?
That's a great question, Dr. Barth. So once the ESSA plans are firmed up, I plan on having providing technical assistance to all charter schools to talk about their goals and how their goals may or may not need to be adjusted according to correspond with what's in ESSA. So I plan to facilitate a few workshops after talking to people in accountability and people in the Division of Learning Services and with legal about what recommendations we should make to them about how to change those. If they do choose to change their goals, it will occur through an amendment request process. And I believe that the panel has specifically noted that they want the school to change their goals or update their goals, and they've neglected to do that, I imagine that the panel will call the school in.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I will invite a motion either to review or to not review. Okay.
Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. Chambers not to review, seconded by Mr. Williamson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you, Ms. Boyd, and thanks to everyone from Blytheville on the phone. We appreciate it.
All right. The minor academy representatives are here. We have Josh Harrison, who's the principal, and Leanne Pinkerton, who is the director of the minor academy.
All right. Okay. I'll start down here. Ms. Cochran, any questions? Ms. Newton, Cheryl, any questions? Ms. Black? Ms. Hook, anything? All right. Okay. I will entertain a motion either to review or not to review this this proposal.
I did not to review.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Motion not to review by Ms. Rye, seconded by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Thank you, folks from Bauxite. Thanks for being here. We now move to the third proposal, which is the Rogers New Tech High School proposal.
Yes, Rogers New Tech has renewal was approved for 5 years. I've not been in touch with Dr. Arbuckle this morning, which is kind of out of the ordinary. So I don't know if you have questions. We'll see how we need to proceed if you do have questions.
Okay. All right. Do we have questions? I'll start with Ms. Dean, Ms. Hook, Ms. Reith. Anything over there? All right. Any questions? Okay. No questions on the Rogers proposal. Ms. Newton? Oh, I thought you were, I saw you grabbing.
I'm moved to approve, or not review, sorry.
Okay, motion not to review. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Ms. Reith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Next up, the Washington Academy in Texarkana.
For Washington Academy and Texarkana, the principal of the academy, Terry Taylor, is present should you have questions.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent Taylor. Any questions? Anyone over on this side? Anyone on this side? All right. I'll entertain a motion on the Washington Academy decision.
I move to not review.
Motion by Ms. Dean not to review, second by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. All right. And next up, the Arkansas Arts Academy. I know that Superintendent Mary Lay is on the phone for this one. So I'll turn it over, Ms. Boyd.
Arkansas Arts Academy was renewed for 10 years. If you have any questions, Ms. Lay is on the phone to answer those.
Okay. And this is just a straight extension?
Yep, this is a 10-year renewal. Previously, I believe it was a month or two ago, they came and asked to move some grades from one building to another because they're building a larger building at the high school. So they will be making that change, but that's really all it is a shift of students.
All right. Okay, any questions? Mr. Black, Ms. Chambers? Okay, anyone else on this side? Anyone over here, Ms. Hook?
I know in this particular case, there was some concern expressed by the panel about what they were going to do to shore up their K-3, and they had very specific and objective type ways that they were going to do that. So the panel did recognize that they needed to do that, and that question was asked.
Okay.
I move that we, are you finished?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I move that we not review.
All right.
Second.
All right, motion by Ms. Zook, seconded by Mr. Williamson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you, Ms. Lay, for being on the call this morning. Congratulations.
All right, next we have Northwest Arkansas Classical Academy. Superintendent Stephen Gass is here in person should you have questions.
All right, and this is for
A 10-year renewal, thank you.
and a cap change as well, correct?
That's correct. They did ask for a cap increase.
Okay. My question, there was no opposition from local districts on this proposal?
No, Dr. Barth, we did not receive any opposition.
Thank you. Okay. Motion by Ms. Chambers.
Second.
Second by Ms. Reith. Any further discussion?
I have no, just made a comment. They lead the state in a lot of their areas, and they are already using the science of teaching reading with their children. They're not waiting around for their turn. They're jumping in, and I was pleased to hear that because we want innovation in the schools, and that at this point, unfortunately, in Arkansas is innovative.
All right. Although, any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. And finally, we have Premier High School.
Premier High School was renewed for 5 years, and Stephen Gass is also the superintendent for this school. He's here should you have questions.
Okay. Ms. Reith, anything? Ms. Dean? No? Ms. Hook? Mr. Black? Ms. Chambers? Ms. Newton?
I just had a question. I saw this charter renewal was for 5 years, and we had another renewal that had similar academics and similar need to rewrite goals, but it was only renewed for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So why was this one given 5 and the other one only given 3?
Right. I have 2 responses for that. So in the first, the one that received 3 years asked for 3 years, and for the second, the one that they asked for 5 years and they received 5 years. Another difference between these 2 schools is that the second one that received 5 years has a specific mission for recovering students. So their goal is to work with students who otherwise may not graduate.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep, Dr. Hill.
And I'm very familiar with that. That was a school that we've been a part of for the community outreach that's really serving an underserved need. And really, when it was brought to us, it was really a dropout prevention program. That's a charter school that's specializing in dropouts on the college campus.
Thank you, Dr. Hill.
Okay. All right, I would entertain a motion on this proposal, or this decision by the Charter Authorizing Panel. Move to motion not to review the panel's decision.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Chambers, second by Dr. Hill. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Okay, everybody good? Need a break? Okay, we do need a quick break, and so we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 11:20. call us back to order. And on the 1240 waivers, we are going to rearrange those just a little bit because two of them do have to do with school start date, and that's an issue we've dealt with before. And so we'll deal with the Little Rock and Pulaski County requests first, although we will deal with them separately. So we'll go B, D, A, C, if you're following at home. So, Ms. Boyd, do you want to walk us through procedure?
Right, okay, so with the Act 1240 waiver request, these Act 1240 of 2015 allows school districts to petition a state board for all or some of the waivers granted to an open enrollment public charter school that serves students who reside in the school district. The board may grant or deny any of these requests in whole or in part. The procedures that we'll use is that the applicant district will have 20 minutes to present their request. And then if anybody opposes that, they have 20 minutes, and then there's a 5-minute rebuttal to the opposition. After that, we'll go into question and answers, and then you all will decide whether or not to grant the request in whole or in part. Do you have any questions about that? All right, so the first one is the Little Rock School District. You're familiar with the waiver that they're requesting. It's the school year start date waiver. They're requesting it for 1 year. And from the Little Rock School District, we have Rhonda Benton, who's the Director of Human Services, and Eric Walker, who's a staff attorney. Oh, and Dr. Barth, you will need to swear them in.
All right. For those of you who are not attorneys, if you'll raise your right hand. You want to?
Yeah, let me say, I want to make sure everybody knows that Mr. Kane Webb is here today. He's going to be speaking on, and so I don't know that, Kane, if I would characterize what your comments are going to be as in opposition, you really want to just talk on this issue. Yeah. So from the perspective of our procedure, it probably fits in the 20 minutes that we've allotted for opposition, but just wanted to preface by saying he's really just bringing information and perspective. Okay, so I don't know if that means he needs to be sworn in. We would? Okay, yeah. All right, so Kane,
Mr. Webb, if you would also raise your right hand, and just so that we don't have to do it later. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right. And so we start with 20 minutes for the district, and obviously you don't have to spend all that time. We have some familiarity with the issue.
Good morning. My name is Rhonda Langrel Benton, Director of Human Resources. I'm happy to be here with you this morning. Good morning, Commissioner Key, Chairman Barth, members of the board, and media that are here. You have in front of you a copy of the district's waiver request form. We are asking for a 1240 waiver to change the start date for our school year for only one school year, the next school year, the upcoming school year. If we are granted this waiver, there are several advantages for us. We would be asking for a start date of August 13th. If we are not granted the waiver, we'll have a start date of August 20th. In the year that we're currently in, school year, our first day of school was August 14th. So in fact, while this looks like a big change, it would really be a minimal change to us as far as the start of the school year. It will help us, we believe, balance our fall semester and our spring semester as far as what the requirements are for students. What we want to avoid is having instruction time and semester tests that would be pushed back past the winter break. We don't think that's good for any of our students. Otherwise, we would have to be cutting into some time during the Thanksgiving break or the winter break, the Christmas holiday break, in order to get everything done, all of the instruction and the exams, finished by the time we break for the winter break. Those would not be popular with our families that we serve. If we do not have inclement weather, and it's hard to know what Arkansas is going to bring, but if we have the start date of August 13th, we would finish school by Memorial Day of the following spring. So I believe that we have some opposition as far as cutting into the summer by moving a start date from what would be August 20th if the waiver is not granted to August 13th. But I would counter that then we actually have more summer on the back end from Memorial Day on, because if we're not granted the waiver, the possibility of inclement weather means that we would be having school into June. That has happened to Little Rock School District before, that we have had school instruction days going well beyond Memorial Day, and many of you probably know those are not days that are even well attended.
All right. Anything else? Is that it? Okay. All right. So I'll turn it over. First off, is there any other opposition to this? Okay. Then I'll turn it over to Mr. Webb for his comments. And you do have up to 20 minutes.
Well, I'll take my time. Thank you, Dr. Barr. Thank you. Yeah, and like Commissioner Key said, this really is an opposition. It's just kind of some information perspective and concern from our private industry partners. My name is Kane Webb. I am the director of the Parks and Tourism Department for the state of Arkansas. And we do work closely with private industry, small businesses in the hospitality and tourism industry. And one thing they have become concerned with over the last few years is this kind of an early creep of the school start calendar. It has slowly eroded their summers. August used to be one of the really the best month of the summer for some of these small operators from a economic standpoint. Now it's practically disappeared. As the school year starts earlier, if we start August 13th, that means a lot of extracurricular activities start even earlier. Parents, students start thinking about going back to school after 4th of July, and I've heard anecdotal evidence from many tourism operators that after that 4th of July, they should start to see their business drop off. They also have a hard time keeping employees because many of these use part-time student help during the summer months. There has been a couple of studies on this done by the Arkansas Hospitality Association. I want to pass along some of those numbers that they've found since the school year start has been earlier and earlier. Roughly a loss of about $200 million annually in travel expenditures, loss of $10 million annually in state tax revenues, loss of $3.7 million annually in local taxes as we see fewer family vacations occur in August and early September. A couple of studies I found recently, one out of the University of Minnesota, looked at 5 states that went from the early school starts in August to post-Labor Day or near Labor Day starts. And they found a 50% increase in those states in the number of family vacations in August and early September. Family vacations being defined as 2 or 3 overnight stays 50 miles or more away from the residence. So that's a real vacation. That's real money back into the economy. Michigan is kind of a test case for what's happened. It'll move back, calendar back toward Labor Day. They did that about a decade ago, and they've seen about a $20 million increase in annual travel expenditures. But again, it has as much to do with family time as it does with the economics of the industry. They're concerned because with this slow creep, it's causing them to kind of rearrange their schedule and their calendar. They're not making it up in June because you've got camps, you've got school activities almost right after the school year ends, and it's just becoming tougher on them.
Mr. Webb, I guess I'm not surprised by your comments, but I guess I am a little curious why we've been dealing with this issue for several months now, and why have we not heard from this perspective kind of several months ago?
That's a very fair question. I think that the industry understands the law and that it would have to take some sort of legislative tweak perhaps in 2019. There was some confusion as to the length of the school waivers. I think we thought they were a year and didn't realize it was a 5-year waiver, and that it would kind of blanket the state like that. So a couple of those things have come into play.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And just to clarify, the waivers that had been requested from the co-ops were 5-year waivers, and Little Rock is coming, they're just asking for 1 year. I'm not sure about Pulaski.
And just to clarify, the reason we're getting these separately, of course, is that these are not members of co-ops, right? Right. Ms. Boyd? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
I was just going to confirm that you're correct, and Pulaski County, in just a moment, will ask for 5 years as well.
All right. I'll just go around. I'll start with Ms. Reith and see if you have questions do they have time to respond? Yeah.
They have 5 minutes should they choose to.
Okay, so 5 minutes to close for the district, if y'all want to respond to anything that's been said.
Just going to mention briefly in regard to kind of the way that the calendar looks, this request is really just going to significantly mirror the way the calendar looks this year, with the start of school being August 13th per our request. This year's start was August the 14th, so it doesn't change or creep into the summer in this particular instance, as well as, I think in the materials there's a mention of, athletics and that kind of thing. All of that will be going on at the normal time period anyway, no matter when the actual start of school is. So I don't think that would be a factor in deciding, I guess, when the school year should start, because the athletics and programs and that kind of thing are going to continue the way they normally would. And wanted to know that, there are other schools within the county and the Central Arkansas area that will be starting during that week as well. And so I don't believe that there would be a significant impact if approved.
Thank you. Mr. Webb, did you have any additional comments? Or okay, all right. So Ms. Boyd, we can move to questions and discussion. Great. Okay, I'll start with Ms. Reith.
Thank you. I just have a brief question for ADE. Because I missed last month, what was the justification for the districts that wanted a 5-year request? I understood the issue of this specific calendar year, and so I understand the 1-year request. But for those that requested 5, and I know that's not specific to Little Rock, so it really is a question more for ADE.
Because for the next 5 years, the 19th will fall in a different week than the typical start of the second week of August. Because next year,
so this
the 19th will be a Monday, and then, like that. So they looked at the full calendar.
So they were looking for, so that they wouldn't have to come back. Okay.
Right.
Commissioner, anything?
Right, thank you.
Dad?
No, I mean, just to say that issue of 5 years has, Mr. Webb referenced that, that has generated some additional discussion after last month, that I've been in contact with folks who have expressed some concern about that. And, the other thing that was specific to the co-op's waiver request was that they said that they would not start school any earlier than the 13th, which was a detail that I don't recall that we really talked a lot about that in our discussion here at the board. But Ms. Zook was right as far as their justification for why they asked for 5 years. One of the things to keep in mind, and I think Mr. Webb mentioned it, is we don't know what the 2019 legislative session is going to bring. School start date is something that it's kind of like kindergarten start date. Every few years there are bills that come and tweaks made to it. And so I think where I appreciate the Little Rock being willing to ask for that to be for 1 year. So by the 18-19 school year, in the 19 session, we will kind of see where things are lining up, and then the board could address it again later. But those were not really components of the conversation last month when we had the previous requests.
I guess I do worry. The legislative session, obviously, they need to, districts have to get their calendars set as early as possible. And, I assume that the legislature would probably not be able to act on this until into the session. And so, this is just as I kind of pointed out last month, this is just kind of turned into a messy situation with a lot of different parts moving at different speeds. Even the legislative action in 2019 may not fully solve this problem in time, right?
Maybe, but I just pointing back to when this really started, the most recent iteration of looking at start date was the 2013 session, I believe, and that's the changes that were made in 2013 applied to the 13-14 school year. Yeah, so it was done early enough that schools were able to change, but in that case, schools were wanting it, they were asking for it, so they were they were ready to make modifications at the time. So I don't think that would be as big an issue as we might think, based on history.
Okay.
Did all of the co-ops request that, or state that they wouldn't ever start before the 13th?
That'd be a question for Ms. Boyd.
And Dr. Cudney represented all the co-ops, and in his testimony, he did say that, and so it does apply to all the co-ops.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Dean, any comments or questions? Ms. Zook, comments or questions?
No, I just wondered if there was a reason they just asked for 1 year instead of 5.
Unfortunately, Mr. Poore is not here, but that was a request that he specifically made, was just for 1 year.
Okay. Mr. Black? Okay. Ms. Chambers? Mr. Williamson? Ms. Newton? Ms. Cochran? Okay. All right. So we are ready for a motion, either direction.
I move to grant the Little Rock School District's waiver request.
Okay, so motion by Ms. Wright, second by Ms. Dean. Is there further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Congratulations to you, and thanks, Mr. Webb, for your comments, and you can obviously reiterate them if you wish on this next item. And so we now move to the Pulaski County case, same issue but slightly different details.
Dr. Warren, the Superintendent of Pulaski County Special School District, is here to request the same waiver for a 5-year period. And again, she'll have we'll do the 2025 again. Comments. Sorry, Dr. Warren up.
All right, and thank you, Dr. Warren. I will swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, and you may proceed for 20 minutes.
I'm Janice Warren, Interim Superintendent for the Pulaski County Special School District. Let me say to you first, thank you for the privilege of presenting before you this morning to offer this request for our allowable first start of school day. So thank you, Commissioner, and all of you members of the board. I won't need 20 minutes because basically what you heard, I could say ditto to the majority of the evidence that the Little Rock School District presented. I would say to you, our calendar request for August 13th start mirrors exactly the calendar that we have followed in Pulaski County for the last umpteen years. However, if we would have to start school for the 18-19 school year on the 20th, our first and second semester would be considerably different, a difference of about 16 days, which would throw off our first semester calendar, where we like to give our students the first semester exam before we part in December, which is always better. Another thing I want to point out, that allowing us the August 13th start day will give us more instructional days in, leading up to the spring testing, which is something we always need. We prefer not to go to school after Memorial Day. Attendance is not always best. Student attendance when we return to school or have to after Memorial Day, particularly when we've had some weather issues. So for those reasons, I am requesting a 5-year waiver. We are requesting the 5 years, so we won't have to come before you again, because the August 19th issue is for the next 5 school years. However, as Commissioner Key alluded, if there is a change in the legislature, we will gladly come back before you. But as of now, we've already recognized for the next 5 years that the August 19th start day would be a problem for us for these reasons. one other reason I want to state before you, keep in mind, and you're probably aware, but the schools in Central Arkansas, Little Rock, North Little Rock, Pulaski County, and now the Jacksonville North Pulaski School District, we always like to have our start date. We coordinate all the superintendents with when school would start, so we will have very similar calendars. And Jacksonville and North Little Rock School Districts, through their co-ops, have already been approved for the August 13th school day, as well as Cabot, Conway, Benton, and Bryant. We coordinate with those school districts as well when we're dismissing school, when the weather is bad, on those kind of things. So for those reasons, I present this request to you.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. All right. Mr. Webb, do you want to make any comments? Okay. All right. Okay. Questions? Ms. Cochran? Ms. Newton? All right. Any, Ms. Hook?
I'd rather wait till she sits down so she doesn't think I'm picking on her.
Yeah.
I'm done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Warren. Ms. Hook?
I think that to the points that were being made by the Parks and Tourism, and to the points that about children and the number of days and all of that, there are actually, between the start date and Memorial Day, like 200 days. But because we get out so many days during those times for, and I didn't count the week at Thanksgiving and the 2 weeks at Christmas, but teachers could be going earlier and students not. Now, I realize teachers have lives and families and vacations too, but some of this is brought on by the fact that the school districts are making decisions about starting the kids early, letting them out, and then working in the PD and all of that. And you all know that I'm real big on PD before kids come and PD after kids leave, not so much during the year unless it's like an emergency or some new law is passed and you have to get the information out at that time. So we could easily take the interest of students and the interest of the families and Parks and Tourism into account if we had control over all of that other. But we don't. So therefore, we have to make a choice between kids and Parks and Tourism.
Any other comments, questions? All right. So you know the issue before us. Guess the motion is to approve the waiver or deny the waiver request. Mr. Williamson?
Move to grant the waiver.
All right. All right, motion by Mr. Williamson, second by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay. Congratulations, Dr. Warren. All right, so I think, are we done with that issue for good? For this year? All right. So we have a different 1240 waiver request from the Hillcrest School District.
That's correct, Dr. Barth. Superintendent Crabtree is here to request a waiver for teacher licensure for 5 years. I would like to make a note that if this waiver is granted, we need to add a waiver of 6/17/9/19 to fully effectuate the request. Mr. Crabtree is here to present the request to the to the board. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Crabtree, if you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. You may proceed for up to 20 minutes.
My name is Greg Crabtree. I'm superintendent of the Hillcrest School District. I was born and raised in that school district, graduated from there, and I've been employed there for 25 and a half years, a little over a quarter of a century. First of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity to present this waiver. Thank Commissioner Key and the ADE for the way that they work for us. Probably not many weeks go by without a call from Hillcrest asking a question, clarification. So thank you for all your support. We're in a rural, isolated location, And Commissioner Key doesn't want to hear my 8-point sermon after 2 legislative sessions about how isolated we are. But to put it in perspective, we have 1.4 students per square mile. There's 3 districts that have that in the state. So you can't get there from here. I'm going to try tonight when we get done, but not a lot of industry in the area. Teacher shortage, that's the only reason I'm here. We've reached a critical level. You know it. I know it. ADE is working hard to revamp the licensure. They've promised their help. It's coming. I know it is. They help us daily. One example, real quick. My daughter is in the mid-level education program at Arkansas State University. She's a junior. When the semester started in August, there were 13 mid-level in the program. When the semester ended at Christmas, they're down to 11. That's the second largest university in the state of Arkansas. Used to be, I think it still is. That services a lot of our area. That area is growing. Brooklyn, Valley View, we're 60 miles from there. It's hard to compete with that. What we're trying to do is an old terminology, grow your own. And we have some local people, went to college, they have bachelor degrees. We advertise for certified positions in a lot of different areas. Those applications just stop coming, especially in the high school area. But you've heard the numbers of the mid-level. You see that that's reaching a critical stage. So we currently have 3 Apple people working. They have bachelor degrees. They're working on certification. But we also have 2 long-term substitutes. What we're trying to do with these waivers is just get some stability, whether it's in coaching, whether it's in business, living a semester at a time with a substitute. We're just trying to get some stability for our students, and we feel like that's what's best. You heard I've been there a quarter of a century. Both principals have been there over 20 years. High school, elementary curriculum ladies are there 25 years plus. We're not throwing these people into the wolves, as the saying goes. We have one situation that occurred 8 days prior to school starting. We lost our agri teacher, no applicants. We had a local lady that was art degreed. She filled in as a long-term sub. We had a hometown girl graduate December. We hired her January 2nd. We have both of them there, and we have a retired agri teacher coming in 2-3 days a week. We're giving them the support they need. So with that, I'll take any questions and try not to take more of your time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Crabtree. Any opposition? Okay. So we're ready to go with questions. Ms. Reith?
Thank you so much for joining us here today, and it's a pleasure to hear about what's going on in your district. I was just wondering, to what extent have you had conversations with your teachers in regards to this specific waiver?
We're a very small local district. About 90% of our teachers are homegrown, which means I have been their teacher. We talk daily. I'm a full-time bus driver. I see them on duty of a morning, afternoon.
So they know
they know the issue is probably them teach more children, and they would be willing to do that. But they also know these applicants that we're talking about. Some of them have been their students, some of them classmates. So they're very aware. I have board approval. I brought copies of the board minutes if you would like to see those. The board is behind this.
And if you could kindly remind me, what is the length of your waiver request? Or are you posing a length of your waiver for your waiver request?
We put 5 years on that, but I will assure you, we'll only use that when there's no other option.
Thank you so much.
All right, Ms. Dean.
I think my only request, not only of you, but all of those of you who are having to ask for this waiver, is to keep track of the scores and the classroom management issues, discipline issues for those teachers, because, you know, first year is the hardest thing in the world you can do, in my opinion. But we want this students to have some stability in the teacher, but we also want the students to be getting a quality education.
Yes, ma'am, and thank you for those comments. And to go along with that, we do have a mentor teacher assigned to each one of these. We have cameras and microphones in all of our high school classrooms. We utilize the co-op, the ADE, like I say, some retired professionals coming in, but thank you. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Black, Ms. Chambers, Mr. Williamson, Dr. Hill, Ms. Newton.
Yeah, and this might be for Ms. Boyd or Dr. Owa. How will the new licensure rules affect what he's asking for?
Jeremy Owa, Educator Effectiveness. With two of the licensure exceptions, it would give districts more flexibility. The teaching permit requires the bachelor's degree, AQT status, and it's granted for a year with the potential and option for an additional year. So that teaching permit would also be available once the new licensure rules are approved. And then the effective teacher licensure exception would also give the districts flexibility of being able to have a teacher that's already licensed to take on a grade level or teach a grade level above or below their grade level span. So it would add additional flexibility for them.
Okay. So potentially it could take care of several of the things that he's asking for.
That's the plan, and that we hope so. So once the rules are actually approved, then we'll start meeting with school districts and co-ops and explaining the options that they have under those.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. How aware are districts that this is out there and then they can tap into that?
Yeah. We've already started the conversation about the new rules. I think they're out for the second time for public comment, and so I wouldn't say most, but several educators have commented about the licensure rules. We've had 2 or 3 meetings with our advisory groups about the licensure rules, and so the knowledge is out there, but we'll continue to provide that technical assistance and support once the licensure rules are approved for district officials as well as school educators.
I would encourage you, I know summer's coming soon, so as I know y'all make the rounds a lot in the summer, and I think that would be something that would be of great interest to administrators to kind of explain those new licensure rules and how those exceptions might help them a little bit in their hiring for the summer.
Duly noted. And we've also met with the teacher organizations, Dr. Lynch and Mrs. Kohler, and so we've had ongoing meetings with them explaining the new licensure rules, and so they're in return, sharing that with their stakeholders, their constituents groups.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Ms. Cochran, any questions? Okay. Are y'all ready with a motion on this proposal? All right. Ms. Zook?
I move that we grant the waiver.
All right. Motion by Ms. Zook, second by Dr. Hill. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you. Thanks for being here, Mr. Crabtree. All right. And finally, I think we've got time to get this one done this morning. The Palestine Wheatley waiver proposal.
Thank you, Dr. Barth. Palestine Wheatley Superintendent, Mr. Estes, is here to make a similar request. His request is for the remainder of this year and 3 years. So the waivers he's requesting, if granted, would end June 30th, 2021.
All right.
Mr. Estes is here.
All right, Mr. Estes, good to see you. If you'd raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right. You have up to 20 minutes.
I won't take it. Y'all will be at lunch on time. I want to start by thanking everyone on the board. This is on something else, and it won't be very long. About 4 years ago, we had a mother come before the board crying for her child to school choice into my district. And because of the political environment and laws at the time, she was denied. And the next year, second year, she came back crying for her child's school choice into my district, and because for the same reason she was denied. And I remember Ms. Wright crying because it was such a heart-wrenching deal and a heart-wrenching decision. She came back the third year wanting her child to school choice into our district, and because some changes, she was able to do that. And every morning I see that child, and he was going through such tough times, just bad situation. And every morning I see that child now, and he's out playing with his friends, and he's laughing and joking and hanging with his buddies. I go by his classroom, he's sitting in the front where his mama tells him to sit, and he's just doing great. So if you ever want to see the positivity of the fruits of your labor, that's a perfect example for that. So thank y'all on his behalf. I'm here also just about everything Mr. Crabtree said. You can just put in mind, I'm asking for a waiver. Month before last, I was up here. I told you I didn't want this waiver. I don't want this waiver, but it's something that's necessary. I've got a math teacher, a guy from Arkansas Teacher Corps teaching math. He's been there all year long and has not been able to pass his math test. He's the best math teacher I've had in 4 years. He's going to continue to try to pass his math test. But at this point in time, he just has not passed it. And so that's the reason I need this waiver. So I can pay him. I'm paying him as a long-term sub. I'm not going to be able to keep him around paying him as a long-term sub. I need to pay him as a school teacher.
All right. I'll start over here. I assume no opposition, Ms. Boyd? All right. Ms. Boyd, Ms. Cochran, Ms. Newton.
Is this waiver specifically for this one teacher, or is it a general waiver?
So in the past, I believe we've been able to specify a specific building that a waiver will affect, but I don't think there's a way for us to specify that it'll just affect a particular person.
So I guess my question is what are you asking for? Okay.
I'm asking for this, in this situation, for this one teacher. I also have a lady, a great teacher. She's a licensed special ed teacher who and is a real good Spanish teacher, but she can't pass the Spanish test. So she sits and facilitates virtual classes and instead of teaching. So if this waiver is granted, I'm going to talk to the high school principal about allowing her to teach Spanish also. So I cannot say, I'm asking for 3.5 years to get these taken care of, and I don't know what will happen in the next few years.
So I guess my question is your waiver for the district or for the high school?
For the district.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Dr. Hill? Mr. Williamson?
Is this middle school math or high school?
High school math.
Okay, because I know there had been several people who were having trouble passing middle school math, particularly from a particular institution, so I just didn't know if he got caught up in that as well.
No, ma'am.
Great. Ms. Reith?
Just confirming, have you, and you may have mentioned, I apologize, but the time, or have you thought of a time frame for this waiver request?
3.5 years.
3.5, okay.
Yes, ma'am, to cover the rest of this year and then 3 more years. The Arkansas Teacher Corps cadets, the candidates, they stay for 3 years, so this will cover him. And but I'm quite sure that he's going to pass his test, and I'm quite sure that eventually my girl who takes the Spanish test about every 2 months is going to pass hers.
Fantastic. And just because I always ask this, but have you discussed this with your teachers?
Yes,
and your community?
My teachers. I'm like Mr. Crabtree. Many of my teachers have children in the district, and they want good teachers, and they understand good teachers and being able to get them.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll just make a quick comment. I mean, I do think we looked at those patterns earlier. We look at these cases on an individual basis, but together they start to create patterns. As a state, we have said that the practice test is one of our gauges of someone being prepared to teach, and so I just put this out there in terms of undermining, that criteria that we as a state have said is one of the bases for someone being ready for the classroom. I know it's not the only thing. I know there are different issues there, but I just put that out there. But I will, on that note, entertain a motion.
I move to approve this waiver request.
Okay. All right, motion by Ms. Rye, second by Ms. Newton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, congratulations, Ms. Resses. All right.
Last thing, Dr. Hill, because of stuff that you've done in the past, my oldest son is a Buffalo, and because of decisions and things that you did, the groundwork and the framework that you laid, I appreciate that. His greatest educational lesson that he'll learn will probably not be in the classroom, and I appreciate you for that. Yes, sir.
All right.
That's all for me, Dr. Barr. Thank
All
you.
right. Good work, Ms. Boyd. With that, we have a break until 1 p.m. when we'll pick back up. All right, I'll call us back to order. We have, first up this afternoon, a new issue, something we have never dealt with before, and so Ms. Hollis Ford is going to need to walk us through what we are looking at with item 1, which is a reinstatement of a Succeed Scholarship.
Good afternoon, Board. Dr. Barth, thank you. Courtney Salas Ford for the department. Yes, so this is a request for a reinstatement of Succeed Scholarship, and this is arising, as many of you know, in 2015 we had the Succeed Scholarship program that began. Students have been awarded a scholarship to attend a private school and receive funding for that. The ADE rules governing the Succeed Scholarship program provide that if a student wants to change and attend a different private school mid-year, that they must get that approved from the state board. And so we have Miss Diana Mathis here today, and she is requesting that the board approve the transfer of the scholarship payments from Compass Academy to the Academy at Riverdale. Ms. Mathis is here if any of you have any questions for her, and I'm available as well if you have any questions.
Ms. Ford, Salas Ford, do we need to swear her, do you think?
If you're going to have any questions, yes, I would recommend swearing her in.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and have Ms. Mathis, if you would come up, and better safe than sorry. So I'll ask you to raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here today. All right, so did you want to make a statement explaining the switch? Okay.
The reason why I'm trying to do a transfer is at the time when the Succeed Scholarship started, Compass Academy was accepting it. And Compass Academy is a school for children with special needs. I have a nonverbal 15-year-old son with autism. And at the time, the Academy of Riverdale did not have a class open. And so the class has become open. And I was driving back and forth from Little Rock to Conway every day. And it has something to do with the driving distance and better equipped school for my son.
All right, great. We'll see if anybody has questions. We'll start over here. Ms. Newton?
This is for Ms. Salas Ford. The student is still eligible, is that correct? And is the school that transferring into an eligible school?
Yes, the student is still eligible. He had an IEP prior to entering, being approved for the scholarship, and both schools are eligible schools.
Okay. That was all my questions. Thank you.
Right. Dr. Hill, Mr. Williamson, Ms. Chambers, Mr. Black. Ms. Hook?
Ms. Salas Ford, is this, I know that some of the wording got changed in the act in 17. Is this one of the ones where it says the state board shall, or is it still say the state board may?
So this provision is actually not in statute. This was something that was simply put in rules, and it states that if a student wishes to transfer to another eligible school within the same school year, they shall request a transfer from the state board. So you do have permissive authority in this case.
Thanks.
Ms. Dean? Ms. Reith?
No question.
All right. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
I move that we grant the transfer.
Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. Zook, second by Ms. Dean. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mathis. Good luck to you and your student.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next up is rules being sent out for public comment. Hi, Ms. Dedman. And these are the Schools of Innovation rules.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Jennifer Dedman, attorney for the department. I'm here on the consideration for public comment for the proposed rules governing Schools of Innovation. Act 871 of 2017 amended the code regarding Schools of Innovation in just one area. If you look to the rules, the single sentence that was added to the rule is found at section 8.01.11 of the rule. We'd ask that these be released for public comment, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Anything over here? Any comments or questions? All right. Any comments or questions?
Questions.
Ms. Zook, a question?
Under the, excuse me, public comment release for Schools of Innovation for 4 years can be renewed. So they have to, they get it for 4 years and then they have to renew. Am I understanding that correctly for the School of Innovation?
The School of Innovation are you asking if Schools of Innovation are granted for a 4-year period at which time they have to renew?
Okay, and at least one of the Schools of Innovation is in a level 5 district. Is it possible for us to get a yearly report of the progress of any that might apply to?
I think Courtney is coming to join me.
Better to get help than be sorry, right?
Agreed. I'm sorry, and if you could please repeat that question. I heard the school was in a level 5 district.
Right, and I wondered if we could get some sort of yearly update from that school to see what they're doing, see how things are changing, or progress report, because I don't suppose we have ever done it, or hopefully we'll never need to, but you might, it'd be nice for us to know how that School of Innovation is doing in a level 5 district.
Let me tackle that one. I think as part of our process of updating the systems analysis and the results that come from that, that's something that we would certainly add, since I believe Hall's the high school or the school that you're referring to, and it's
there
relative.
May be others.
And there may be, but that's the one that came to mind, and but that's certainly a piece. And I'm looking at Dr. Hernandez. He's nodding that is something we will add as part of the update. So it won't be annually. It'll just be something that we look at as an ongoing component of the systems analysis
So we can get, like,
and
reports
transition.
or whatever.
Yes.
Because I know School of Innovation is decided in-house,
Right.
but the level 5s come to the board. So when you have like a crossover, I guess that's what my thinking was.
Yeah, and that's, so the idea is that looking at all the potential opportunities for schools, if they are in a level 5 district, to make their plans to get better, this is the type of thing that we would look at as an option for them, and certainly reporting back to you all on the results of that is something we would be, that would be part of our efforts.
Okay.
So happy to do that.
And 11.00, negotiated employment contracts. 11.01, a public school district with a negotiated employment contract is in place shall follow the procedures set forth within the contract that allows the implementation of a School of Innovation. That didn't appear to me that it was in the law that was passed, but may have been something that was added when rules were written.
It was not added this time.
No, I know it's in the book.
It may have been.
Yeah.
It may have been added at some point before. If you'd like to know, I can certainly figure out when that was added and let you know.
Right, and if it's not in the actual law itself, then I'd like to know what the rationale behind adding it in rules was.
I can certainly find out.
Thank you.
Actually, I have a general question related to that. So when we have a fairly minor tweak to a law that impacts the rule, is when it goes back out for public comment, is all of the rule again fair game for public comment, or only the revision?
I believe Ms. Reno's coming.
Lori Freno, Department of Education. That's a good question. I mean, in the past, we've just always kind of treated the whole rule. I mean, if someone made a comment on any component of the rule, we're not going to ignore it. I mean, we might not make the change, but we're not going to ignore any comments we receive. One thing we're exploring now that we haven't done a lot in the past is when we have rules that have just one section that's changed, is taking that section alone through the promulgation process, which is completely acceptable under the APA. But to answer the initial question, we're going to respond to any comments that anyone has to make.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you. Ms. Hook?
Yes, and I know that the law, the act, said that it was for the benefit of the students, the schools of innovation. And this appears, although there might be a ripple effect, this appears to address for the benefit of the staff, not the student in particular. So even though I'm not saying I disagree with this, I just think that whether it belonged in here or not is a matter of opinion, unless you can give me a rationale.
I will certainly look into that.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. The request is for this to go out for public comment, and so I would invite a motion to that effect. All right. Motion by Ms. Newton, second by Ms. Chambers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you. I think you're up again, Ms.
I
Dedman.
am. I'm here also on item 3, which is consideration for public comment for the proposed rules governing diplomas for veterans of World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. This rule is mandated by Arkansas Code Annotated 6-16-133 and 134. The entire rule is new, and we're asking that it be released for public comment, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions on this rule? Okay. All right. Again, I invite board members to, if they so wish, to send along their public comments as part of the process. Any folks ready for a motion on this one? All right. Motion by Ms. Chambers. Second by Mr. Black. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. All right. Thank you,
very
Ms. Dedman. Okay. Next up, we have final approval, and Ms. Salas Ford is going to be taking this one.
Thank you. Yes, I am filling in for Miss Davis, who is enjoying herself on a cruise ship off the Pacific coast somewhere. So, but before you, we have the proposed ADE rules governing required training for school board members. The board approved these rules for public comment. Public comment period ended on December 27th. Public comments were received, however, only minor, no substantive changes were made, and so we are asking for final approval for these rules.
Okay. I'll just go over here. Ms. Reith, anything? Ms. Dean? Ms. Hook, do you have anything on this
I
one?
wonder if the people who train are going to be PD'd or updated or whatever as the types of things that ESSA will change about the increased responsibility of school boards. So do they get that training from you all, or how does that do, the School Boards Association, who does the training?
If it's the School Boards Association, I mean, I know they, on their own, make an effort to stay abreast of all of the new changes and laws. We certainly assist them, as well as our PD unit, and so as we would for any PD provider.
Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Black, anything? Ms. Chambers? Ms. Newton?
This doesn't have anything really to do with the rules, but, and I can't get mine to come up to look at the list, but as I looked at the list that local school board members are required to go through training, as I looked at that list, I saw several things that would have been helpful for me to, I'm not a background of an administrator, so some of the things that y'all talk about, especially in the areas of finance and different things, are foreign to me. So there were several of those things on there that I thought, yeah, that I would have liked to have had that one. Yeah, I would like to have that one. And so, I don't know, as we get, we talked about training for new board members as they come on. We got training, but it centered more around kind of the workings of the department rather than some of this background training. And I saw several things in their list that I think would have been very helpful for me to kind of get me up to speed. So, that's just kind of a thought that y'all might think about it as you start bringing on new members.
Yeah, and that's obviously a point well taken, because we're getting ready to orient a couple of new members this summer. So probably looking at that agenda for that orientation process makes good sense.
We'll make note of that.
Yep. All right. Anything else? All right, I would invite a motion to approve these rules for final approval.
Motion to approve the rules for final approval.
All right. All right, motion by Ms. Dean, second by Dr. Hill. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. And, yes.
I have an answer for Ms. Zook. Sorry, I beat you to it wherever Jennifer went. That provision you asked about in the School of Innovation rules is part of the original Act 601 of 2013. So it is specified in the statute, the very same language. District with a negotiated employment contract shall follow procedures set forth in the contract.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so we are now up to the ADE rules governing educational service cooperatives.
Thank you. Mary Claire Hyatt for the department. The board approved these rules on November 9th for public comment. No public comment was received. The public comment period ended on December 27th. The governor has approved these on October 10th, and so ADE respectfully requests that the state board give final approval for these rules.
Okay. No public comments? Any comments from us? All right, I will invite a motion. Mr. Williams?
I move for final approval.
Thank you. All right. Motion by Mr. Williamson, second by Ms. Zook. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. A painless first time at the microphone. So.
Thank you, Dr. Barth.
Okay, and finally, we've got another big batch of transitional support plans. Of course, we saw others last month, and so I will turn it over to Ms. Frazier and Dr. Hernandez.
Good afternoon. Tia Frazier from School Improvement. And we have before you today a consideration to go forward with these transition plans, much as we did last month. There are 31 of them here today, and just kind of wanted to give you an update of what our plans are since meeting with you all. School Improvement has 21 specialists in our office right now, and so we are working to team out and go on like a 15-day tour of Arkansas. That should start roughly January the 22nd and end on February the 9th. Our goal is for each of the teams that we have decided upon within our unit to go out and meet with each of the districts that have focused priority or a combination of the two in order to walk through, here's what you wrote that you were requesting from us, let's unpack that, how can we help that happen, put who the responsible parties are and the timeline for making that happen. Hopefully within that time, we will also have an approved plan for ESSA, and we will then start, and hopefully rules as well for the Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability Act. So we kind of have two big waves of going out and making sure that we have a consistent voice in the field. The first wave is the clarification of what do we mean in the transition plans and how are we going to make that happen. And then the second wave would be to, now that we have rules for the Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability Act, what are the expectations for the school improvement planning and the district plans of support?
Dr. Mike Hernandez, I don't have anything to add to that right now, but those are the plans that we have going forward. So.
All right. Okay, we saw this last month, and so I'll just go around to see if there are questions or comments. Ms. Reith, anything?
Not at this time.
Okay. Ms. Dean? Ms. Hook?
I think the thing, I mean, you know of my concerns, because they haven't changed, and agree with yours. One of the things that I noticed, a lot of them are using the 10%, but the 10% won't wind up matching the ESSA goal of, okay, we'll get nods, great. We're all on the same page.
Hopefully in our second round, or at least by May, we'll be ready to go out and talk about the growth calculation. We're doing a lot of stakeholder, I think you all have been invited to go through the ESSA index and how we arrive at A to F. So once you go through that, then we'll be repeating that process out in the field once we actually make a decision on cut scores and that kind of thing. So when districts understand how those cut scores work and they understand how to look at all of those measures and the school quality success indicators, then hopefully we'll be able to help them set better goals.
When would we expect to see the next iteration of these plans?
I think that was our question for you all today, is that originally we thought that by the time we came to you with a transitional support plan, that it would be better quality than it currently is. However, based on our concerns and yours as well, we did realize a need to go out again and kind of shore this up. You know, what are we looking for? So I really hate to give the deadline, although I do know what the 15-day timeline looks like.
And I think the preference, what Ms. Frazier had mentioned, is that, you know, the schools are now getting their ESSA school index in draft form and looking at those and making some determinations. And once all that ESSA plan gets approved and those can be finalized, you know, we're going to get to that May 1st timeline where they're going to be able to look at and make their new school level plans that will in turn kind of update how we might work to update these transitional support plans. In October of next year is when those district support plans are going to be redone. And so I know that's not probably quick enough, but that makes a lot of sense as to after those district support plans are looked at, that we will have kind of that November timeline where a new batch will probably be ready to look at.
Okay. So a little less than a year from now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Is that, Commissioner?
Yeah, I just add to what Ms. Frazier and Dr. Hernandez are saying. I can blame myself. I think that I was a little overly optimistic on our timelines and one, getting our responses from the Department of Education on ESSA. And then I think I probably underestimated the time that it would take to change the understanding and going from that old concept of focus and priority and what that meant then to what we're doing now with ESSA and Act 930. And so, you know, as we have learned in our most recent interactions over the last 4 or 5 months with schools when we've started talking to them about it, and even internally, it's been quite a challenge. I mean, it's a mind shift that all of us are undergoing. So, and then getting it in your mind is one thing, and then getting it on paper for then public consumption and consumption by you all, that has presented other challenges. And so the longer we talk about it and look at it and have these conversations with our district partners, the better understanding we are getting and better understanding of how we can put this on paper and capture all the work that is going on. So, you know, these first iterations look like, wow, that's pretty vague. Yeah, it is. But the next iterations are you're going to start seeing a little more concrete responses, concrete actions. But it's part of that growth process of moving to a new philosophy of systems approach of school improvement. But I want to commend Ms. Frazier and school improvement team. You know, losing a leader like Dr. Wild, that could have been devastating, and they might tell you it was devastating, and they haven't recovered yet. I don't know, but that you know, great. So happy to have him where he is because it's much needed, but that has, you know, they've stepped into a void, and I really want to express my appreciation for the hard work that they have done, and Ms. Kaufman, Dr. Hernandez, Ms. Frazier, and that team, because that's made this challenge even greater. So, Tia, thanks for all the work you've done. Mike, appreciate it.
And just a couple other things is that we know with referenced Dr. Wild, is we don't have Earl's plan yet. And I anticipate as our working with that is you'll see a lot better quality plan, what that looks like, because he's going to, he got in there and is starting to have lots of conversations that probably on an academic side needed to happen. And so he's working to revise some of that and work that process. The other thing about a little less than a year, I didn't want to give the impression that we're not continually still working in those transition plans. Just, we've had meetings recently with some schools where, they've identified yet another request or a need, and so we're going to go back and add those things to that plan. And so I would think of it as kind of a working contract between the AD and the district of how we're going to supply things, but I just think in that November timeline, the next iteration, that's going to be a lot better because we're going to be a little more focused on, not thinking in terms of what are the supports that I need just to get 1003 funds. It's going to be a lot more expansive into all the other things, and then some will incorporate some of the larger systems as well.
Thanks. Mr. Black, anything else? Ms. Chambers.
Just a process question, and as the commissioner spoke to, I think it's very appropriate to anticipate the iterations that are required just to do this the right way and to get it right. The process question is, I noticed there's quite a spectrum. In some cases, it's improved something by 10%, and something else it's just improve. And while I certainly appreciate the benefit, the importance of the districts owning their plans, will there be more consistency when we go through this iterative process, that they'll all have more quantitative goals? They're goals to set, but it won't be enough to say, I want to improve my math skills. And that's a question, not a statement.
I'll try to answer that, and you jump in if I'm saying this wrong. I think what we're kind of also seeing, and we mentioned this last time, is kind of a void in capacity sometimes to write good goals and write good actions behind that. And so I think as we start to get district level folks more comfortable with the research and the strategies to actually improve math scores, that's going to flesh out a little bit better over time. And I think those are some of the conversations that Tia and her team, as they start to go out, are going to start pointing back towards the research. And we're trying to do a better job of organizing the research and give them good indicators that they could be working towards to make those improvements. And so I think that's probably on us as well, as trying to organize, and we're working with other, looking at other states and what they're using, and working with I think we mentioned before, the state support network that's helping us kind of organize ourselves better and trying to say, okay, this is what you should be working towards, instead of saying you have low math scores, you need to improve them. So that's part of that process that I think is going to get us to next year's iteration. Is going to be a little bit better we hope a lot better than it was this time.
And if I may add to that as well, remember part of our ESSA plan is identifying long-term goals toward that, the long-term goal of 80% on achievement, which we have our state progress. We know how much as a state we have to improve to get there, but the districts will be expected to look at the subgroup level, African American, Hispanic, Latino, students with disabilities, all the subgroups that we have. And so they will be looking at those subgroups to determine what their local progress needs to be, progress toward those goals. Different than what it was under No Child Left Behind, where if you didn't make those goals, you got dinged and put in some type of label for school improvement. But that will help with our school improvement team, helping walk through what those local goals need to be. So to your question, yes, as ESSA gets approved, then we can apply that on these plans that you're seeing, and that iterative process will help us really narrow down where, because it may not be an all student, it may be a subgroup of students where they really need to put their focus, and that's a different approach than what we've had in the past.
It is. So to your point, ESSA will actually help. The ESSA clarification will help inform the district on how to set meaningful goals.
Yes.
within
And they will be able to hone it down, pin it down at the school level, and then be able to bring that back at the district level and determine what their district support plans are. That helps us inform what they need then from the department to go in and help support that effort.
Mr. Williamson? Okay. Dr. Hill?
Tia might have wanted to add something to that. I'm not sure. Okay.
All right.
Ms.
Newton?
My question, I think it goes a little bit more general, and you correct me if I don't have this understanding correct, but every district in the state, when we get an SO approved, will start writing support plans for their schools. And we see a problem with these approximately 60 districts being able to do it, and your team is going to go out and you each one have 3 or 4 districts. But what happens when we start looking at statewide and we start getting the same sort of plans that are just vague, they don't really know what they're doing? Have you got a plan to help everyone to be able to successfully support their schools?
Yes, ma'am. So we're working really hard on what those general supports would be for everyone. And one of the things that we're doing right now is looking at what the draft rule of Act 930 says that school improvement plans must include, as well as what district plans of support must include. We have a phone call in with one of our external partners that you guys all know as Industar. That's the Academic Development Institute that's in charge of that. They have partnered with the State Support Network and the Center for School Turnaround for years. So they are, we have a follow-up call with them within the next 10 or so days to see what kind of, how they could help us develop that training and general support so that we go back out, just like we did before when we did the Industar pilot around the state, and give that general training and guidance for all, as well as put that on our website and update our website.
When do you anticipate doing that sort of training?
So until we have rules that are approved, then we would hate to develop a training that possibly went against anything that might change in the rule. So we're planning now, scripting now, with the anticipation that when the rules are final, we can move forward.
Okay, and the deadline for the districts is?
The deadline for the district plan of support is September 1st, submission to the department.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Cochran, anything? Okay. Ms. Hook?
Excuse me. The form has district, school, all of that. So for the charters who do not have a district, maybe they're just a school, do we need a different form, or do they just understand that?
We could make those modifications. Right now, when we go in, we work with APSRC closely, and Dr. Todd, we've had several conversations about the fact that the school level team is, in essence, the district level team, with the difference that they might have a financial manager somewhere else, California, wherever that person might be. So we try to chime those people in on the phone and make sure that we're all having the similar conversation. That might also be true at a really small district like Lead Hill, for example. Basically, their school improvement team is their district improvement team. So that might be a bit better approach for them.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. Then the request from the department is to approve these transitional plans of support. So I would invite a motion to that effect.
I move that we approve these transitional support plans.
All right. All right. Motion by Ms. Chambers, second by Mr. Black. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. All right. Thank you. We have no other action before us today, so I would invite a motion. Okay. Yes. The weather is looking okay-ish, right? At the moment. At the moment. So we will. Yeah. We'll stay tuned. How would we, if we did have a cancellation? How would we expect an email?
An email, or we'll call you,
okay.
Or both. But yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on it, and if anything happens, we'll certainly get in touch with everyone.
Are you talking about for dinner this evening?
No, for tomorrow. Everything looks fine for the evening, but tomorrow morning is some possibility. Okay. So I would invite a motion to adjourn at this point. Move to adjourn. All right. Motion by Mr. Williamson, second by Dr. Hill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Great. Good work.